Hello, and thanks so much for joining us today. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. My guest today is Kristal Brent Zook, a professor of journalism at Hofstra University and author of I See Black People, The Rise and Fall of African-American-Owned Television and Radio, Black Women's Lives, Stories of Power and Pain. And joining me today to discuss her brand new memoir, The Girl in the Yellow Poncho. Kristal, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
Listen, I want you to know that the book is just phenomenal. It's a great, great, great story. But I was so shocked as I was reading it because we've known each other for
20 years?
20 years. And I was saying before, oh, I know Kristal. I did not know Kristal. All of this story, you know, that was happening inside of you during the last 20 years and the years before that as well. It's a, you know, it's a chilling story, comforting in the end. And I want you to know I was telling a very good friend of mine about your book, and she said, don't tell me the end. I want to read the book. You know, don't say another word. Talk to us about writing this. What brought you to?
Well, it was really my daughter. When she was about 1, I started thinking again about multiracial identity. My daughter is African American, white, and Southeast Asian. And
You adopted her.
She's adopted, yeah.
At a baby. Well, we say that. I adopted, you know, as well. So there are children. But
Yes. She was adopted at birth, and she is part of this whole new generation that's come about in the last 20 years, more than that, really. The multiracial category was in the 2000 census. You could now claim other or different combinations for the first time. And, you know, when we were coming up, our generation, it was not that way. It was still the one drop rule. If you're a little bit black, you're black.
Oh, believe me, and I was in the generation or two ahead of you where it was, you know, brutal, but
Right, and that was codified. You know, that was law for so many years, and it culturally part of our existence. So I started thinking about that as a journalist, and somehow it just evolved into a personal story, and looking for my white father who was missing. How did that play into my own identity, in my own questions? And it really, it's not what I expected it to be, but now it's a personal story.
I know, but it's like this great novel, you know, that has a beginning, middle, and a boom, big end to it that is totally unexpected.
Surprise! I didn't expect it either.
I know. The audience is going to be like my friend. Don't tell us. We want it. We want to read it. But you were raised by your mother, your black mother and grandmother, as a black child, and I say somewhat unfortunately for you, you did not look like a black child. So talk to us about that disconnect and the kind of anguish that it brought you throughout your childhood.
Yeah, you know, I always say, young people, it depends so much on your context, right? How if both parents are raising you, if you're multiracial, what neighborhood you're living in, how your schools are. There's so many factors that go into multiracial identity, right? But my grandma used to say they're mixed if somebody would ask. You know,
right, I know that
that was the term that we used. They're mixed, right? But so they didn't say we were black, but of course we're in an all-black female household and a working class household, and I always say that those things went together for me. You know, race, class, and gender are all of a piece, and so I can't separate them out. That's who I am. But yeah, if you look at me,
right.
You know, so I'm in one of those strange positions where there was nobody white in our household. We don't even have any uncles or cousins or aunts. My cousin, who's on the cover of the book, is also
with you,
right?
Yes.
Biracial, and was raised with me. And she didn't have any of the white side of her family either. So it was a very unique circumstance. And she definitely doesn't necessarily look black either, but that's our identity is constantly shifting, I think, like many multiracial people.
So talk to us about your dad, because the book is a lot about looking for him. Not totally, really, but this search for him and of how you perceived his rejection of you as a child as so profoundly affecting throughout your entire life.
Yeah, I'm not sure why it had such a powerful impact on me, his being gone. There was no divorce, there was no marriage, so there was no fighting. There was nothing I could see that I could say, well, I'm glad that's over, right? To me, he was always coming back because he sent me letters that said, I love you, and,
So he and your mother were together. Actually, it turns out longer than anybody ever acknowledged,
Right.
but, were together, and then he vanished. So.
He left when she was pregnant at 21 in Venice, California, and that had a really strong impact on her as well, and her relationship with me, which was part of what I didn't understand until, midway through the book, that the healing that had to happen, it wasn't just about my father. It was about my father and my mother healing, and it was also about my mother and I. So I like to say that healing has like a ripple effect. Once you start the process, it's like a chain reaction, right? Where things that you didn't even know needed healing.
Exactly.
Come up.
So he went off. As far as you're a child, and you keep, saying as children do, "Where's my father? Where's my father?" And then he would appear occasionally through your life. But then, you would get together, and I'm not giving away the full story here, and then stop talking for years, and then resume a conversation, trying to heal the rift.
Right. I think it's significant that my father is now 50 years sober and drug-free. And, he's been working his program
That's an
for
accomplishment,
a
right.
long time. And he's been actually a mentor to so many sponsees in his community. But when it came to me, for many years, he had a hard time talking about, well, why'd you leave? Why didn't you come look for me? He really had a hard time with those questions. And I think in the end, it was a matter of forcing him to answer the questions so that we could get on with our relationship. And that's when it finally worked at last.
Yeah, and you very movingly talk about the addiction on both sides of the families, through your mother's chain of generations, and your dad as well. So it's not only the black-white, but it's the, being under the influence of, addiction, through many generations, and how that affects people.
Yeah, it's generational trauma for very different reasons, right? But on the black side of my family, there was alcoholism. They grew up in Southside Chicago. There was hard living, gambling, hard work, and a lot of fun, as my mom likes to say. It wasn't all bad,
Right.
but there was trauma going back to my grandmother and her parents and her upbringing. They were part of the Great Migration from Arkansas, and just sort of followed that pattern of trying to create a life in the ghetto, as my mom put it. But I think that there were, for me, memories, or not memories, but idealized notions of what that meant. It was a community. It was a black community where people took care of each other. Right? There were rent parties. They weren't just drinking, they were helping each other. And so part of me wanted to go back and relive some of that we didn't have, or we didn't feel in the same way. And so it was looking at the trauma, but also the joys and the strengths of those communities.
Right. So how would you say that the writing of the book, this is over I mean, how many writing years did you put into it?
Maybe
I know
4 years.
4 years, but the
Yeah.
living, your entire life of living all of this, and for those of us who knew you and always saw the smile on your face and, we can do this, so let's move along.
Cheerful.
The
Yellow Poncho, the girl in the yellow poncho.
I know, we're like, well, wait a minute,
Yeah.
and it's this, as I said to you, I think that this book will be extremely helpful to Black women because the story that you tell is one that so many of us have lived ourselves, of a father or two or three who has, disappeared. And so for many of us, the response to that is, forget that, let's
Right.
move along, let's even think about it.
Exactly. Don't feel the pain, don't acknowledge it, just move on, be strong. That was the thinking that I had to do battle with because I was raised that way too, right? Just be strong. And there was something in me, and that's why I say that the yellow poncho, that was always dreaming of a fairy tale ending or, always hopeful, optimistic, cheerful, at least on the outside, right?
Right.
And sort of just demanding that ending for myself, that ability to create my own reality, right? And I think that's the lesson for me, a lot of it. There's so many layers in the book. I like to say it's for people who have had not only a missing parent, but a distant parent or a traumatized parent.
Because that is what you had to deal with as well, too, as you realized the trauma that not only your mother had been through, but your poor father as well as a child,
Right.
Had been traumatized.
My mother, my father, my grandmother, it's for people who, we came up in the era before Me Too. And a lot of us have kept sexual assault inside, buried very deep. And so myself, my grandmother, it's for those of us who have that story to tell as well. And that's it becomes part of our identity and part of our relationship with men and our understanding of men. So having a missing father and missing men,
Right.
and then also going through an experience like that just really shapes your identity. But the book is also for people who, there's just so many levels. It's for people who believe in second chances and forgiveness and faith and just sort of, someone once said, well, is there too much of that like kind of new age-ish kind of spirituality or whatever? But I think there are a lot of us who believe in intuition and, God's angels are constantly guiding us and showing us the path if we just follow it and without fear, or at least working through our fear to just move forward and keep following that guidance. So it works on a lot of different levels.
It does. And interesting, the sexual assault by a neighbor of you. You're finally sort of remembering, and then increasingly demanding that there be some sort of revenge or acknowledgement at least.
Yeah.
Talk to us about that.
I think that's the journalist in me.
I know.
Right?
It's
You
like-
could see where I'm constantly knocking on doors of strangers, just trying to get answers and showing up places where I'm not expected.
Right. And in this guy's door, right.
Yeah. So I went back, I don't know how many years later, 40 years later from when I was a child. And to my amazement, I looked on the mailbox and there was their name in this apartment, that they were still there after all these years, which I didn't expect. I thought I would just look at the apartment complex and think about it, but I saw the name. Marched upstairs, knocked on the door, and I won't say what happened, but it was part of my process of confronting, right, the past and confronting everyone who I felt had done me wrong, whether it's my father, the neighbor, demanding right? That's what we do for a
Right,
living,
right.
demand answers.
Right. And so you got that's an answer. I would just will say that the way you describe, seeing his young son, there and understanding the generational trauma, harm that that existed in that household as well. So you mentioned that you're a journalist, and that's how we know each other. I know your work and your. I was you've been at Hofstra for how many years as a tenured professor? Which is no small achievement.
17 years.
17 years.
Almost. Yeah.
And now Hofstra is like the number 2. I'm sure it's number 1, but ranks very high. Talk to us about that. Your work in the field of journalism and now turning out these new journalists.
Yeah, it's evolved. Our field has evolved so much over the years. I told my new students yesterday that they're so brave for pursuing this field in this environment where, I hope that they'll become truth tellers, which is not easy to do today. But I teach advanced reporting and writing, and just really enjoy helping them to see the value of good journalism that's missing from so much of our dialogue, and also the role that it plays in upholding our democracy. That they're part of that very, very important role.
And essentially, we used to talk about that, saving the democracy, in some sort of euphemistic, distant way, and now we're really talking about it's on our doorstep, that we could have seen our last elections and all of that. It's a totally new thing, but just at the time where the people that you're turning out have fewer places to work and are under other kinds of constraints. What do you tell them about that?
I tell them there are always jobs out there. There really are jobs. If you're willing to move, if you're willing to be flexible, if you're willing to learn new skills and not be stuck in, we have some that I want to do sports or I want to do entertainment.
Right.
And that's it. You need to understand all of the different facets of journalism, because what if you're in the middle of a reporting on sports and there's a climate emergency? Right? Or a natural disaster. What if, I always talk about the issue of concussions with football players. You're going to need to talk to neuroscientists, understand the brain. You can't just be one thing anymore, or if you ever could. You need to be open to learning. And I think that's how it's evolved in my own career as well, going from talking about culture and TV and film and race to expanding into social justice, which is really where I found my footing. I still write about TV and film, but I wanted to write bigger, longer pieces about everything, health, environment, prisons, education.
So you have done so miraculously and fabulously, I will say, because your name still resonates with the great journalism. What would you? And again, this whole idea of identities, even with your students, and even with the stories that they're telling, and even with the society that we live in now, where certain identities and certain histories are being negated, ever more so, feeling fully who you are in your body and in your genealogy, so to speak, becomes important.
And that's what's so different about this generation, I think. They're claiming that they're Black Capino, right? Malaysian. I mean, Tiger Woods did it a long time ago, but everybody kind of chuckled at it when he did it.
Right.
And now there are student multiracial groups all across the country and different campuses, and I didn't have anything like that when I was growing up. So when I think about my daughters, the environment that she'll have, there really is a lot more freedom to decide who you are, and And like I said, research shows that multiracial people change, shift their identities over time, over a lifetime, even in different social contexts, which is fascinating to me.
Well, that whole thing of, being biracial, is sort of like, no, that doesn't tell the whole story anymore,
Right,
It's,
right.
What are we really talking about?
Right. What languages do you speak? What countries? Now we have a certain globalism. Young people will be Vietnamese and Guatemalan, right? And with everything that comes with that, are they from an immigrant family? Or are they, first generation? And so it's not black and white anymore, and we can't make the same assumptions that I think we've tried to make for so many years.
So when you were small, you would say I'm biracial, I'm black, and now you say I'm black, I'm multiracial, what? So how has it changed for you?
Yeah, I'm still black.
I'm still black.
I'm not gonna be anything but black. Although you find out in the book what my actual DNA is, I find out, and to me that's not really the issue. That's not important, what percentage I am. And I understand that may make some people uncomfortable because of the way I look, but it's identity from the inside. So yes, I'm definitely multiracial, biracial, but my identity is African American.
African American. It's all of the, those churches and everything.
Yeah, the tall-hatted women. The tall-hatted women,
right.
Calvary Baptist.
Right.
There is something of that seeps into you, and at a very young age, even though, maybe we didn't continue for many, many years, but I remember so clearly being taken by my grandmother to Calvary Baptist Church and Bible study. And, when those women wanted to know what we were, my grandma sort of brushed it off. They're mixed.
Right.
But here we are in a black church. So.
Exactly. Now talk about Olivia, who is shockingly going to be 7 years old soon.
Yes.
And you're raising her in a multi-dimensional family. Your husband is from Spain, and she has these multi-ethnic a mixture. Tell us how that all came about.
Well, part of the research that I found is that parents, even today, still were not doing enough of a good job with helping multiracial children understand. I'm definitely not in my generation, but even still today, my daughter has, like I said, Southeast Asian heritage. That's not something that's familiar to me or my husband, and I think it's important that we educate ourselves, continue to educate her about what that means, so that children, when they come up, they need to understand or to feel a connection to their roots, to their heritage, and that we know that makes for a healthier sense of who they are. She's also being raised by a Spanish man. She's learning Spanish. She has many, many relatives in Spain. So that's part of her identity too. It's not all biological. It's all of it together, right?
Right. And I love the story of your having almost given up with the adoption system and how frustrating that could be. And at the last minute, you got a call saying they had a baby for you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people will relate to that also. And again, it feels like destiny. It feels like guidance. It feels, this is beyond this is beyond me. This is a biological mother who decided very clearly and strongly that my husband and I were it. And, the system tried and failed to play tricks, but I think she had made up her mind very, very clearly from the beginning. And that's why, in the end, everything was so smooth, I think, and everything was just really almost a fairy tale.
Oh, I can't wait to meet her. And I can't believe that I don't know her already,
I know.
I mean, in my mind, she's still the tiny baby that, you know, that I see. But here you're. Well, the book is getting rave reviews. You're in all of the big magazines. You know, the response to that, as you write in the book about your career and where you were headed, and your success in publishing and all of that, you must feel gratified that, you know, that now you've, can we say, you've made it again and again and again. I mean, you've always been successful.
You know, sometimes we're stuck in that pattern of, oh, I could do more, I could be more perfect, I could, you know, right, do more and more. But yes, I am very, very, very gratified. It's been a long road of struggling as a loner, as I say, a professional loner, and not knowing when to ask for help when I should have. And that's one of the lessons of the book that I think many Black women can relate to as well. You know, feeling like you can do this on your own and you just tough it out. You see in the book many points where I could have used help, and I could have reached out more. And so this book feels almost like a reckoning with that in a way. Also, just I've been in touch with so many people from, you know, including you, that I haven't seen over the years as much as I would have liked to, and learning new things about people who are in my life and them learning new things about me. It's really created a new sense of belonging and community.
Well, we thank you so much for the book. I think it'll be extremely helpful to anybody who's ever had a life.
Right.
Because so much is covered in Kristal Zook's life.
Everything.
You know, in this book, and she works all the way through it and will be very helpful to anybody else who is attempting to do that, thinking about doing that, or if you haven't done it, it's probably time to read Kristal's book and get busy in working out your family and what it did to you, both good and bad, and how you create a life from all of it. Kristal Brent Zook, thank you so much.
Thank you, Carol.
The book
is,
I know, it's so great to see you. She's a professor of journalism at Hofstra, of course, and the author of The Girl in the Yellow Poncho, that yellow sunshiny poncho.
Yes.
A lot behind that, as you'll find out in her memoir. I'm Carol Jenkins. The program is Black America. Thank you so much for being with us. We will see you the next time.